So I want to tell this story about leadership and about the difference between confident, good, thoughtful leadership and reactive leadership. Just in a small way, I was thinking about this story. 25 years ago, I was a junior instructor on an 18-day long backpacking and mountaineering trip in the Wind River Mountains of Wyoming. Very deep snow that we were schlepping through on our snowshoes, multiple river crossings, very heavy packs, 8-10 days worth of food at a time, with a bunch of very competent young students from university. And this was my very first really challenging leadership experience. I led some small backpack trips, led some rock climbing trips, but this was the real deal. Just I and my much more experienced co-instructor, Willie Williams, and these 10 students out in the middle of nowhere. And at the end of the trip, after a pretty successful trip so far, one of our students kind of slipped into a hole between a rock and some melted snow. And it turned out later, we found out she ruptured her meniscus and tore one of her knee ligaments. And she was unable to walk very well. She was definitely not going to be able to carry a pack. So when I came on the scene and saw this ginormous swollen knee on this young lady, and I saw the pain in her face, and I thought about where we were 20 miles from the roadhead, and that roadhead was another probably 20 miles of dirt road down to town and a clinic. And I saw the stiffness and pain in her knee, and I thought, this is it, we have to call for a helicopter. There's no way that this young lady can get herself out. We have to call for help. We have to stop the trip. We have to just can it all. There's nothing we can do except pull the ripcord, essentially. And pulling the ripcord back then was not that easy. We didn't have satellite phones. We had ground-to-air radios that would allow us to call over flying aircraft that might be flying over the Wind River Mountains and ask them to forward the message onto the airport and onto the sheriff's department. And then we'd have to use our maps. We didn't have GPS. We'd have to use our maps to determine our latitude and longitude to be able to bring in a helicopter. Then we'd have to craft some sort of helicopter landing zone amongst all this snow-covered rocks and jumble in order to get this young lady out. But I was ready to do that. I had given up, essentially. But my co-instructor, Willie Williams, had a ton more experience than I and was much more confident and frankly was much more dedicated to the experience of what we were doing. I was ready to pull the ripcord and say to these young people, we don't have the capacity. We're not up to this moment. And that wasn't true for Willie. Willie was absolutely up for the moment, and he brought the rest of us along on his leadership and his confidence. We splinted up the young lady's knee, got her in a walking splint. All of the other students divvied up the gear and food that she had been carrying so that their packs became heavier and hers became pretty much empty. We needed to be able to create a sidewalk in the snow for her so that she didn't have to bend her knee. She needed to be able to swing her leg around. And so a team of students, of 3 or 4 students, walked in front of her packing down the snow with their snowshoes. And she was able to swing her leg down the trail. We also needed a team of students and Willie to set up rope bridges across the streams. Previously, we'd cross those streams by taking off our boots, rolling up our pants, and using our trekking poles to stabilize ourselves and wade, through hip-deep water to get to one side to another. And that just wasn't an option for this injured student. If she slipped on a rock, she would just re-injure the knee. So we set up rope bridges at every stream crossing. So that team would race ahead, go set up a rope bridge. We'd pack down the sidewalk, my team. We'd pack down the sidewalk. Injured student would come to the rope bridge, zip across by clipping in on a harness. We'd keep going. The rope team would gather up all the ropes, take down the bridge, and rush ahead to the next stream crossing. And I believe they did that 4 or 5 times. And as a team, as a concerted team, taking more leadership. It wasn't just Willie. He inspired leadership in me, and he inspired leadership in all of these students to do more than they thought that they could, to put more weight in their packs, to hike with more ropes, to hike faster than they'd hiked before. And that young student who was injured was also inspired by our leadership. She trusted us. She knew we were taking care of her. Never once did she say, I don't want to do this. She just kept saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I am really grateful for that experience, because I saw how leadership can make a difference for everyone. And the way that national leaders are responding to this particular crisis, the COVID crisis and the economic crisis and the crisis in trust and community, is very telling. I believe that leadership can make a difference in how we move forward as a community, as a state, as a nation. We are not bound to how we behave, how we are at any moment. I'm just day to day, I'm a mix, I'm a jumble of disappointments, of joys, of confidence, of hatred, of anti-community feelings, pro-community feelings. But if I have a leader who's bringing out the best in me rather than the worst in me, I know which way I'm going to go. So I'm inspired to be that leader as well. I think the leadership at the very top is critically important, and we can start making choices as a people about what kind of leaders we want to be, of what kind of leaders we want to follow, and make a difference and bring out the best in each other rather than the worst in each other. So that's why I'm out here today. This is where I'm my best, out amongst the boulders and the rocks and the bright sun. And I hope that you find a way to be the best possible leader and really trust that leadership can bring about the best possible outcomes for everybody, rather than giving up and deciding that we are all individualistic people only pursuing our base instincts. I don't believe that that's 100% true, and leadership can make a difference. Thanks for listening.